True story, my daughter stole my savings and laughed, so I gave her the ultimate surprise. Have you ever felt like you were drowning in an ocean of love, only to realize the waves were made of silent expectations, and the current was pulling you further and further from yourself? Have you ever given every fiber of your being, every ounce of your resources, to someone you cherished, only to be met with a cold, dismissive laugh when you finally had nothing left to give? Have you ever reached a point where the very people you built your life around became the architects of your deepest pain, forcing you to choose between your own soul and their insatiable demands? I have. Oh, how I have. And that feeling, that deep, gut-wrenching pain, it taught me the biggest, most unexpected lesson of my entire life. It's a lesson about love, about family, about self-worth, and about what it truly means to be free. I'm Ilara. I'm 72 years old, a widow for many years now, and the quiet resilience I carry today was forged in the fires of a betrayal that nearly consumed me. My late husband, Thomas, was a brilliant man, a quiet pioneer in the nascent days of the tech world. He wasn't flashy or loud, his genius lay in his meticulous attention to detail, his profound understanding of complex systems, and his unwavering belief in the power of innovation, always guided by a deep sense of ethical responsibility. He built something truly remarkable from a garage startup, a company that grew, steadily and surely, into a global giant, providing us with far more financial abundance than we ever truly needed or, frankly, ever desired for ourselves. Thomas was a simple man at heart, despite his immense wealth. He valued quiet evenings spent by the fireplace, the comfort of a well-loved book in his hands, and most of all, the warmth of family, the genuine laughter of loved ones gathered around a dinner table, far more than any fortune. He often told me, with that gentle twinkle in his eye, that true wealth was measured not in bank accounts, but in meaningful connections and the quiet dignity of a life well lived. And he left me with a legacy, not just of impressive wealth, but of profound values, kindness, humility, integrity, and a quiet strength. Or so I thought. Because for decades, after Thomas was gone, I held on to those values, clinging to them like a lifeline, pouring every ounce of my love and inherited abundance into the only family I had left, my daughter, Kaylin, her husband, Corbin, and their 2 children, my beloved grandchildren, Madison and Liam. And for decades, with a chilling, almost methodical precision, I watched as they systematically chipped away at everything I believed in, every value Thomas had stood for, every principle that had guided my life, until there was almost nothing left but a hollow shell of the woman I once was. My quiet strength had eroded into a desperate need to please, my kindness into a bottomless well of appeasement. And then, when I was at my most vulnerable, they came for the last bit of me, the part one held most sacred, the final flicker of my dreams. The day it happened. I remember it like it was yesterday, the details burned into my memory with an almost painful clarity. It was a Tuesday. A sunny, deceptively peaceful Tuesday in early spring, the kind of day that promises new beginnings and gentle warmth after a long winter. I was doing my usual morning routine, a ritual that had become a source of quiet comfort in my later years. A steaming cup of Earl Grey tea, its bergamot scent mingling with the crisp morning air, a bit of light reading, a historical novel that transported me far from my everyday concerns, before I planned to head out to the garden. That garden, my beautiful, sprawling haven, was more than just a collection of plants. It was a living canvas of my life, a place where I felt closest to Thomas. I'd been working on a new rose bed, a quiet little project I'd envisioned for years, something beautiful and lasting to honor his memory and my enduring love for him. It was going to be a memorial, in a way, to Thomas, a silent testament to his gentle spirit, and a small, quiet legacy for the community, a place where people could find a moment of beauty and serenity. I had set aside a significant amount of money for it, not just for the garden itself, the rare varietals, the intricate stonework, and the specialized tools, but also for a small endowment to ensure its upkeep long after I was gone, a perpetually blooming gift to the neighborhood. This was my personal fund, meticulously saved over years, separate from the larger trust Thomas had left, funds that were directly in my personal savings account, known only to me and my financial advisor. I remember thinking about the new varieties of climbing roses I wanted to order, picturing them blooming in vibrant cascades of crimson and creamy white against the garden wall, their fragrance filling the air. My mind was full of such gentle, hopeful thoughts, envisioning a future where this peaceful space would bring joy to others. And then, almost as an afterthought, I decided to check my bank account, just a quick glance, to confirm the last payment for the new greenhouse structure had gone through. It was a substantial payment, and I liked to keep a close eye on such things. I logged in, the screen glowing softly in the morning light, casting a pale reflection on my teacup, and my heart just stopped. The rhythmic beating that had sustained me for 72 years seemed to seize in my chest, replaced by an icy jolt. The balance. It was wrong. Terribly, sickeningly wrong. A substantial sum, a truly shocking amount that represented years of careful saving and diligent planning, was simply gone. Vanished. It wasn't a small withdrawal, a monthly bill, or a planned investment. It was a massive transfer. My hands started to tremble, the mug rattling against the saucer, my fingers fumbling on the keyboard as I tried to reread the transaction history, desperate to make sense of what I was seeing, to find some logical explanation for the gaping hole in my account. And there it was, plain as day, staring back at me from the glowing screen, transfer to K. Miller. K. Miller. Kaylin Miller. My daughter. My own daughter. A cold dread seeped into my bones, replacing the warmth of the morning sun that still streamed through the window. It felt as though a shadow had fallen across my soul. I tried desperately to tell myself it was a mistake, a clerical error by the bank, a cunning hacker, anything but what my gut was screaming at me. My mind raced, searching for any innocent explanation. Had she told me about something and I'd forgotten? No, this amount was too large, too personal. I called Kaylin immediately, my hand shaking so much I almost dropped the phone. My voice, I noticed, was a little shaky, a little higher pitched than usual, a subtle tremor betraying the rising panic. Kaylin? I began, trying with all my might to sound calm, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, to offer her an easy out, an explanation. Darling, I was just checking my bank account, and there seems to be a rather large transfer to your account. Was there a reason for that? Perhaps a bill you needed me to cover, and you just went ahead and... Before I could even finish, before I could articulate the desperate hope that this was all a misunderstanding, Kaylin cut me off, her voice laced with an unfamiliar, almost dismissive amusement, a flippant lightness that sent a shiver down my spine. Oh, that? Yeah, Mom, that was me. She didn't sound surprised, or apologetic, or even slightly embarrassed. She sounded triumphant. As if she had just won a game, and I was merely a pawn. But Kaylin, I stammered, my voice growing weaker, the hope draining from me with every beat of my heart, that was a very significant amount. That was for my legacy project, the garden. We talked about it. You know how important that is to me, how much thought and planning went into it. There was a brief, pregnant pause on the other end, and then I heard Corbin's voice in the background, muffled but clear enough for me to pick out a sneering remark. Legacy project? More like a silly old woman's obsession. The words, though not directed at me, landed like a physical blow. And then Kaylin laughed. A short, sharp, entirely unfeeling laugh, devoid of warmth or empathy. Mom, honestly? A garden? What do you even need all that money for? You live in that old house, you don't go anywhere, you barely spend a dime. Corbin and I, we actually need that money. The club fees are astronomical, and Madison's equestrian training is going to cost a fortune this year. Plus, we're renovating the pool house, and you know how much that's going to set us back. You wouldn't have needed it anyway. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't speak. The audacity. The sheer, unadulterated gall. The casual dismissal of my dreams, my carefully made plans, my very being. And the laughter. It wasn't just Kaylin's, I could hear Corbin now too, a low chuckle, a complicit snort of amusement, joining in, almost celebrating their conquest. They were laughing at me. laughing at my distress, at my shattered plans, at my complete and utter helplessness. It was a sound that would haunt my dreams for weeks. Helpless, Kaylin repeated, as if reading my mind, twisting the knife deeper. Honestly, Mom, you're so helpless sometimes. You'd probably just leave it sitting there, gathering dust. We're actually putting it to good use. That was it. That was the moment. The laughter. It wasn't just the theft, the blatant disregard for my property, it was the raw, cruel mockery that accompanied it. It wasn't just my money they had taken, it was my dignity, my trust, and every last shred of hope I had harbored for a genuine, reciprocal connection with them. It was the ultimate betrayal, not just of my finances, but of my heart. My illusion, the one I had carefully constructed for decades, the illusion of family loyalty, of their love and appreciation, shattered into a million irreparable pieces right there, over the phone, with their heartless laughter ringing in my ears. I couldn't bear another second of it. I hung up. I didn't say another word. I just hung up the phone, my hand still trembling, the receiver feeling impossibly heavy against my ear, like a lead weight dragging me down. My beautiful garden, my quiet legacy, was gone. And my family was gone too, in a way that hurt far more than any financial loss. The silence in the house, once a comfort, now felt like a vast, empty chasm. So how did we get here, you ask? How does a mother, a loving, generous mother who poured her heart and soul into her child, find herself in such a desolate place, stripped bare by her own flesh and blood? It wasn't an overnight thing, you see. It wasn't a sudden, sharp break. It was a slow, insidious erosion, like water wearing away at the hardest stone, drip by painstaking drip, year after agonizing year. It began so subtly, wrapped in the guise of love and familial support. When Thomas passed away, it was just Kaylin and I. She was in her late 20s then, just starting her family with Corbin, a young, ambitious man with an eye for the finer things in life. I was heartbroken, of course, a grief so profound it felt like a physical ache in my chest that would never subside. The world felt muted, colorless without Thomas beside me. But amidst that crushing sorrow, I found a strange solace in providing for them, in making sure they never felt the pinch of financial worry, a burden Thomas had always shielded us from. He had left a truly enormous estate, a legacy of foresight and hard work, and I felt it was my duty, my joy even, to share that abundance with my daughter, to ease her path in life, believing that this generosity would bind us closer. I remember when Kaylin and Corbin were first looking for a house. They had their eyes on this sprawling property in an exclusive neighborhood, a grand place with manicured lawns and towering oak trees, far beyond what they could have afforded on their own, even with Corbin's ambitious but still fledgling career in real estate. Kaylin called me, sounding so stressed, so upset, her voice thick with tears. Mom, she'd wailed, it's perfect. It has everything, a huge yard for the kids, a gourmet kitchen with a 6-burner stove, a 3-car garage. It's everything we've ever dreamed of for our family. But it's too much. We can't swing the mortgage, not even with the down payment. And my heart, foolishly, would melt. I saw her distress, and all I wanted was to soothe it, to grant her happiness. Don't worry, darling, I'd told her, my voice full of reassurance, your father and I always wanted you to have the best. We worked hard so you wouldn't have to struggle. I'll cover the down payment. And the mortgage, well, I can handle that too. Just focus on making it a home, a beautiful place for your children to grow up. And I did. For 20-odd years, I quietly paid their exorbitant mortgage every single month, without fail, a direct transfer from my account to their bank. I never saw a bill, never got a thank you. It just became expected. An assumed part of their lives, like the sun rising in the east or the changing of the seasons. They never offered to contribute, never once asked for the balance, never acknowledged the immense burden I was shouldering. Then came the cars. Corbin, always obsessed with status, always needed the latest model, the flashiest SUV, the fastest sports car. It's for my image, Alara, he'd declare with an air of self-importance. Clients need to see success. Every few years, sometimes even more frequently, there would be a new crisis. "Mom, my car is practically falling apart," he'd complain, referring to a perfectly functional luxury sedan that was barely 3 years old. "It's so embarrassing for clients." Or Kaylin would chime in with a dramatic sigh, "Our minivan is so old, Mom, it's practically a death trap for the kids. We need something safer, something more reliable." And I, wanting to keep them safe, wanting them to feel successful, wanting to avoid their thinly veiled disappointment, would open my purse. A new luxury sedan here, a top-of-the-line SUV there, each one costing more than my first home. Sometimes, they'd even choose the cars without consulting me, just send me the invoice, assuming I'd pay. And I always did. Always. Because I loved them. Or at least, I thought that was what love looked like, a boundless, unconditional provision, shielding them from every hardship. The grandchildren, bless their hearts, they were truly my pride and joy. Madison, with her fiery spirit and love for horses, and Liam, quiet and intellectual, always with a book in his hand. But even they, unknowingly, became instruments of their parents' demands. "Grandma, I really need this new private school. All my friends are going there, and it has the best equestrian program," Madison would say, her eyes wide and hopeful. Or, "My tutor for calculus is so expensive, Grandma, but it's the only way I'll get into a good university," Liam would add, sounding genuinely worried. Of course, I wanted my grandchildren to have every advantage, every opportunity to flourish. So, I paid for their elite private schools, from kindergarten right through high school, year after expensive year. I funded their expensive extracurriculars, Madison's equestrian lessons and show fees, Liam's private tennis coaching and debate club travel. And I set up substantial college endowments for both of them, believing I was ensuring their futures were financially secure, no matter what, a safety net that would allow them to pursue their dreams. I believed I was giving them the best start in life, helping them reach their full potential. But the more I gave, the more they expected. The well of their desires seemed to deepen with every gift, every sacrifice I made. And the less they seemed to appreciate it. Simple gestures of gratitude became rare, then non-existent. My birthday would pass with a perfunctory phone call, if I was lucky, usually followed by a subtle hint about something they wanted. Holidays became opportunities for them to present me with a list of things they wanted, rather than a genuine desire to spend time together, to share a meal, to simply be. I remember one Christmas Eve, a day that held so many cherished memories with Thomas. I had spent days preparing a special dinner, meticulously planning every dish, polishing the silver, hoping for a cozy, intimate family evening, just like the old days. Kaylin called, just an hour before they were due. "Mom, so sorry, but Corbin's boss invited us to his yacht party. It's really important for Corbin's networking. It's such an amazing opportunity. We'll just grab a quick bite there. We can't make it to your place tonight." Her tone was light, dismissive, as if canceling our long-standing tradition was a minor inconvenience. And then, almost as an afterthought, with a little laugh, "Oh, did you pick up that new designer handbag I sent you the link for? And the new gaming console for Liam? We'll swing by tomorrow morning to grab them." My heart sank. The elaborate meal, the meticulously decorated tree, the empty chairs at the table. It was just another example of how I was merely a resource, a means to an end, a convenient ATM. My feelings, my efforts, my desire for genuine connection, they were utterly irrelevant. They started to openly mock my old-fashioned ways, their words laced with a subtle disdain. My modest house, the one Thomas and I had built together, filled with memories and love, was quaint or shabby chic in their condescending terms, a relic of a bygone era. My simple lifestyle, my love for gardening, my quiet evenings with a book, my aversion to flashy displays of wealth, my preference for quality over ostentation, was seen as baffling, even embarrassing. "Mom, why don't you get a new car? That sedan is practically vintage," Kaylin would say, wrinkling her nose as if smelling something unpleasant. Or Corbin would quip with a smirk, honestly, Alara, you're sitting on a gold mine. Why live like a pauper? You could be living it up. They saw my modesty as a weakness, a strange eccentricity, rather than a conscious choice, a reflection of the values Thomas and I shared. Their words chipped away at my confidence, making me question my own choices, my own identity. I would try to suggest things, gently, hesitantly, hoping to spark some sense of responsibility. Perhaps, Kaylin, you might consider contributing a little to the children's school fees? It's quite a burden, even for me, as the costs keep escalating. Kaylin would blink at me, her expression a mixture of confusion and mild offense, as if I'd suggested something utterly preposterous, something unthinkable. Mom. What are you talking about? You're rich. You barely spend anything. Besides, you want the kids to have the best, don't you? It's for their future. You're just so lucky to be able to do this for them. And then, she'd pivot, expertly, to a new demand, a new luxury item she needed, a new vacation they had to take. And I would back down, again and again, terrified of alienating them, terrified of losing the only family I had left, the fragile thread of connection that seemed to be my sole purpose. My quiet wealth, intended as a blessing, had become a curse, a weapon they wielded against me, justifying their endless demands and their utter lack of respect. I was their ATM, and they treated me as such. Press the buttons, get the cash. No human emotion required. There were so many moments like that, little cuts that bled slowly, silently, each one leaving a small scar on my heart. The forgotten birthdays, the dismissed opinions, the times I was excluded from major family decisions, big ones, like where they'd spend Christmas, or small ones, like what color they'd paint the living room in my house, a house they didn't even pay for, yet treated as their own extension. They just assumed, always assumed, that I would go along, that I would pay, that I would forgive. And for decades, I did. Until that Tuesday morning. The morning of the stolen savings and the laughter. That was the moment the cuts stopped being little, and became one gaping, fatal wound, a wound so deep it threatened to consume me entirely. What would you have done? How much more could you possibly take? I ask myself that, even now, in my quieter moments. How could I have been so blind, so naive, for so long, to the true nature of their affection, or rather, their lack thereof? Sitting there in my quiet living room, the phone receiver still heavy in my trembling hand, the echoes of their cruel laughter ringing in my ears, something inside me shifted. A fragile, long-dormant part of me, the part that remembered Thomas's quiet strength, his unwavering integrity, his gentle but firm principles, finally stirred. It wasn't a flicker, it was a spark, igniting a long-forgotten fire. The pain, it was excruciating, a searing agony that threatened to overwhelm me. But beneath the pain, a cold, hard clarity began to form, like ice crystallizing in bitter water. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. This was exploitation, pure and simple. This was a parasitic relationship, and I was the host, slowly being drained dry, not just of money, but of my very soul, my spirit, my sense of self-worth. They didn't see me. They saw an endless supply of funds, a convenient resource to fuel their lavish lifestyle. My legacy project, something so personal, so meaningful to me, a tribute to the man I loved, had been dismissed as a silly old woman's obsession. They had stolen from me, then mocked me for it, rubbing salt into the wound with their callous amusement. There was no going back from that. No more compromises, no more appeasement. My internal conflict was brief, but intense, a battle between the woman I had become, timid, accommodating, desperate for approval, and the woman Thomas had known, the woman I dimly remembered being. For decades, my primary goal had been to maintain closeness with Kaylin, to ensure her happiness, to be the benevolent matriarch, the provider, the glue. But what kind of closeness was this? What kind of happiness was built on deceit and disrespect, on a foundation of my quiet despair? I had always believed that my generosity was an expression of love, a way to show them how much I cared. But I had confused generosity with appeasement, with buying their affection. I had allowed their sense of entitlement to fester, to grow into a monstrous thing that was now devouring everything in its path. My love had enabled their cruelty, their greed, their utter disregard for me as a human being. And in that moment, with a clarity that felt almost divine, I understood. The ultimate surprise I could give them wasn't another handout, another luxury item, it was the abrupt, shocking withdrawal of the very foundation of their lavish, unearned lives. It was to force them to stand on their own 2 feet, something they had never truly had to do, to face the consequences of their choices for the first time. A fierce resolve, unlike anything I had ever felt before, solidified within me. It wasn't anger, not exactly, though a righteous indignation certainly simmered beneath the surface. It was a cold, quiet determination, an unshakable conviction. I needed to protect myself. I needed to reclaim my dignity, my self-respect, the very essence of Elara that had been buried under years of their demands. And perhaps, just perhaps, they needed to learn a lesson that I, in my misguided love and endless appeasement, had failed to teach them. I stood up, slowly, my legs still a little unsteady from the shock, but my resolve growing firmer with every breath. The morning sun still streamed through the window, painting golden stripes across the worn rug, but the world outside felt different, sharper, more real, as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes. The first call I made was to my longtime financial advisor, Mr. Davies. He had managed Thomas's estate and my personal finances for years, a man of quiet integrity and unwavering discretion. He was a kind, professional man, and he knew the full extent of my wealth, and indeed, of my regular, substantial transfers to Kaelin's accounts, though he had always remained neutral, offering only gentle advice. "Mr. Davies," I said, my voice steady now, devoid of the tremor it had held just moments before, imbued with a newfound authority. "I need to make some immediate, significant changes to my financial arrangements." I explained, in brief, factual terms, precisely what Kaelin had done, the unauthorized transfer, the specific amount. I didn't dwell on the emotional pain, the heartbreak, the mockery, I just stated the facts, the cold, hard truth. He listened patiently, quietly, his silence a testament to his understanding. When I finished, there was a long pause, a weighty silence that stretched across the phone line. "Elara," he finally said, his voice softer than usual, a hint of concern lacing his tone, "I'm so terribly sorry to hear this. I've always had concerns about the extent of the funds being dispersed, but it was, of course, your decision. What would you like to do now?" "I want to sever all financial ties, Mr. Davies," I stated, the words feeling powerful and liberating as they left my lips, like breaking chains. "Immediately. I want to cancel the mortgage payments on Kaelin and Corbin's house. I want to repossess their luxury vehicles. All of them. And I want to withdraw all funding for my grandchildren's elite private school tuition and their future college endowments. Every last penny." There was another stunned silence on the other end of the line, longer this time. I could almost hear his intake of breath. "Elara, are you certain? This is a very drastic step. It will have significant repercussions for them. It will essentially dismantle their entire financial structure." "I am absolutely certain," I replied, my voice unwavering, my resolve hardening further with each word. "They have demonstrated, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they view me as an inexhaustible resource, not a mother or a grandmother. They have stolen from me and then mocked me for it. This is the only way. I want everything done legally, cleanly, and without delay." "What are the steps?" Mr. Davies, professional as ever, quickly shifted gears, his tone becoming efficient and focused. He began to outline the intricate procedures, the necessary paperwork, the legalities involved. He advised me to also contact my longtime lawyer, Mr. Thompson, immediately to handle the legal aspects, particularly concerning the house and vehicles, and to ensure the university endowments were properly dissolved or redirected. He assured me he would coordinate with him. The next call was to Mr. Thompson. He was even more surprised than Mr. Davies, his usual composed demeanor momentarily shaken. "Elara, this is, well, it's unprecedented for you. You've always been so accommodating. Are you sure you're thinking clearly? This will be a significant upheaval. Never clearer, Mr. Thompson, I affirmed, my voice ringing with a newfound conviction. My daughter has committed theft. And then she and her husband laughed in my face, dismissively telling me I wouldn't need the money anyway. There is no longer any basis for this financial relationship. I want everything legally handled. The house, the cars, the school fees, the college funds. I want it all stopped. Immediately. No exceptions. No negotiations. He sighed, a sound of resignation mixed with understanding. Very well, Alara. I understand. It will be complicated, particularly with the house. The mortgage is technically in their names, but you've been paying it for so long, we have a strong case for recouping those payments or forcing a sale to recover your investment. We'll need to work closely with the bank to ensure repossession is swift and legal, given your documented payments. As for the cars, if they were bought with your funds and registered in your name, that's easier. If not, we'll have to explore options like proving direct payment for the down payment and subsequent monthly payments. The school and college funds, those are straightforward to withdraw, assuming they were set up as revocable trusts or direct payments from your accounts, which I believe they were. Over the next few hours, my home, usually so quiet and filled with the gentle hum of everyday life, buzzed with an unusual flurry of activity. Phone calls to banks, to schools, to insurance companies, to the lawyers. It was all a blur of decisive action, a whirlwind of legal and financial maneuvers. I felt no regret, no hesitation, no wavering. Only a quiet, resolute strength I hadn't known I possessed. The initial shock and pain had solidified into a protective shield, an unwavering determination to protect myself and reclaim my own life on my own terms. The ultimate surprise, I realized, was not just for them, but for me. I was surprising myself. By the end of the day, the wheels were well and truly in motion. Documents were being drafted, legal notices prepared, bank transfers reversed. It felt like I was systematically dismantling a meticulously built, but ultimately corrupt, empire. An empire built on my money, their entitlement, and my quiet, desperate hope for a love that never truly existed. Now, it was crumbling. And I was the one holding the hammer, carefully, precisely, delivering each blow. I wondered, with a strange sense of anticipation that mingled with a cold satisfaction, how long it would take for the empire to realize it was falling apart, for the full weight of their self-inflicted consequences to come crashing down upon them. Of course, my decision was going to have consequences, wasn't it? It wasn't going to be quiet. It wasn't going to be subtle. And it certainly wasn't going to be pleasant. I knew that, deep down. I had braced myself for the storm. It started subtly enough, a ripple before the tsunami. A polite but insistent phone call from the private school's bursar, politely inquiring why the next term's tuition for Madison and Liam had not been received, expressing concern. Then, a few hours later, a call from the bank, informing Kaylin that her mortgage payment had been missed, and if not rectified immediately, they would initiate serious foreclosure proceedings. Her dream house, the one I had paid for, was suddenly in jeopardy. And then, the luxury car dealership, calling Corbin about the missed lease payment on his latest sports car, which, it turned out, I had also been quietly paying without his knowledge. The trickle of calls quickly became a flood. My phone started ringing off the hook, a relentless cacophony of their desperate attempts to reach me. But I ignored them. Every single call. Every text. Every voicemail, which quickly escalated from confusion to anger to outright panic. I knew who it was, and I needed to let the full weight of their consequences sink in. I needed them to truly understand the depth of the hole they had dug for themselves, the precipice upon which they now stood. I wasn't just cutting off funds, I was forcing a reckoning. It was 2 days later when they arrived, a whirlwind of furious disbelief. Their large, gleaming SUV, the one I had bought Kaylin just last year, screeched to a halt in my driveway, kicking up gravel. Kaylin burst out of the driver's side, her designer handbag slipping from her shoulder, her face contorted in a mask of pure fury and disbelief. Corbin followed, his usual smug, self-assured demeanor replaced by a look of panicked rage, his tie askew. Even the grandchildren, Madison and Liam, were with them, looking bewildered and frightened, clinging to their parents' legs. They hardly ever came to my house anymore, unless they needed something, or unless a holiday mandated a brief, perfunctory visit. Their sudden appearance was a clear sign of the magnitude of their distress. Kaylin didn't bother to knock. She pounded on the door with frantic fists, then, finding it unlocked, let herself in, Corbin right behind her, their hurried footsteps echoing ominously in my quiet living room. "Mother! What is the meaning of this?" Kaylin shrieked, her voice shrill and piercing, her hands flying up in exasperation. It wasn't a question, but an accusation, a demand for immediate rectification. "The bank just called. They said our mortgage payment wasn't made. And the school called. They said Madison and Liam are being pulled out if you don't pay the tuition. What are you doing? Have you gone completely mad?" Her words tumbled out in a frantic torrent, a mix of panic and indignation. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, the one Thomas had loved, a book open in my lap, trying to project an air of calm I didn't entirely feel. But I had prepared myself for this. I had rehearsed this moment countless times in my mind, steeling my resolve. I looked at her, then at Corbin, who was now pacing frantically, pulling at his tie, his face flushed. My grandchildren stood awkwardly by the door, wide-eyed, their young faces reflecting their parents' distress, but without truly understanding why. "What am I doing, Kaylin?" I asked, my voice soft, but firm, each word carefully measured, designed to convey an unwavering certainty. "I'm simply putting an end to a long-standing arrangement. An arrangement that, it has become abundantly clear, was not mutually beneficial. It was, in fact, entirely one-sided." "Not mutually beneficial?" Corbin interjected, his voice rising in pitch, indignation warring with panic. "Elara, we're your family. You're supposed to take care of us. You have all this money, you barely spend any of it. This is outrageous. How could you do this?" "Outrageous?" I repeated, my gaze fixed on Kaylin, my eyes unwavering, unflinching. "Is it outrageous that I've decided to stop funding a lifestyle that you took for granted, that you actively mocked me for enabling, that you expected without question or gratitude?" Kaylin's eyes widened, a flicker of something, perhaps understanding, or more likely just fear, passing through them, quickly replaced by indignation. "What are you talking about? What are you implying?" She tried to feign ignorance, to maintain her facade of innocence. "I'm implying, Kaylin," I said, my voice gaining strength, resonating with a quiet authority, "that I know you stole from me. You transferred a substantial sum from my personal savings account without my permission. Funds I had earmarked for a very specific, very meaningful project, my rose garden, a memorial to your father." I saw her flinch again, a telltale sign. "And when I confronted you, you and Corbin not only denied any wrongdoing, but you laughed at me. You mocked me. You called me helpless and told me I wouldn't have needed it anyway. You dismissed my dreams as a silly old woman's obsession." Kaylin visibly flinched again, her face paling. Corbin stopped pacing abruptly, his jaw clenching. A heavy, suffocating silence descended, broken only by the rapid, shallow breathing of Kaylin and Corbin. Even Madison and Liam seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, standing utterly still, their young eyes darting between their parents and me. "That's a lie." Kaylin finally spat out, though her voice lacked its usual conviction, tainted by desperation. "I didn't steal anything. That money was just sitting there. You never use it. It wasn't doing anything. Whether I use it or not is irrelevant, Kaylin," I said, my voice growing colder, sharper, cutting through her flimsy excuses. "It was my money. My personal savings. And you took it. Illicitly. Without my consent. And then you compounded that act with an act of profound cruelty. That laughter, Kaylin, that callous, dismissive laughter, that was the final straw. It shattered whatever illusions I still held about our relationship, about your character. Corbin stepped forward, trying a different tactic, one I was all too familiar with. Guilt. Emotional blackmail. Ilara, please, think about the children. Your own grandchildren. Do you want them to suffer? To be pulled out of their schools? To have their future jeopardized? How could you do this to Madison and Liam? I turned my gaze to him, my eyes unwavering, meeting his desperate plea with a cold resolve. Corbin, their future was secured by the college endowments I established years ago. You know this. They were set up to give them a foundation, not a free ride for life. And as for their current schooling, that was a choice you and Kaylin made, a choice to send them to elite private schools, a choice I generously funded for years. But now, that choice, and the responsibility for it, falls back on you. It is your responsibility to provide for your children. But Mom, Kaylin whined, her voice now turning tearful, the anger giving way to self-pity, we can't afford this house without your help. We'll lose everything. Our home. Our cars. Our entire life. You can't do this to us. We're your family. How can you be so heartless? Family, I scoffed, a bitter taste in my mouth, the words sounding hollow and meaningless from their lips. Is this what family means to you? A bottomless ATM? Someone to be exploited and mocked? Someone to be lied to and stolen from? Where was your concern for family when you were taking my money and laughing about my silly old woman's obsession? Where was your family loyalty when you excluded me, dismissed me, and treated me as nothing more than a source of funds, a convenient resource to be tapped at will? I looked directly at Kaylin, my voice clear and strong, unwavering in its conviction. For years, Kaylin, I gave you everything. I paid your mortgage for 2 decades, ensuring you lived in luxury you could not afford. I bought you every luxury car you ever wanted, every expensive bauble. I funded your extravagant vacations to exotic locales, your designer clothes, your endless renovations, your club memberships. I ensured your children had the best education, the most expensive hobbies, and secure college funds, believing I was investing in their future and in our bond. And what did I get in return? Contempt. Disrespect. And finally, outright theft and cruel mockery. I paused, letting my words sink in, watching their faces, the dawning comprehension slowly replacing their initial indignation. My lawyers and financial advisors are already in motion. The mortgage payments have stopped. The bank will begin foreclosure proceedings immediately. The luxury vehicles will be repossessed. And the school fees and college endowments have been withdrawn. All of it. Every single penny of financial support you have received from me, directly or indirectly, is now gone. Forever. There will be no more handouts, no more bailouts. You are on your own. Kaylin gasped, her face draining of all color, her eyes wide with true horror now. Corbin looked as if he'd been punched in the gut, his shoulders slumping, his face contorted in a mixture of shock and utter defeat. They finally understood. The depth of my resolve. The finality of my decision. The absolute, unyielding wall I had built. You can't do this. Kaylin cried, her tears now flowing freely, but they were tears of self-pity, not remorse, not regret for her actions. You're ruining us. You're ruining your own grandchildren's lives. How could you be so cruel? No, Kaylin, I said, rising slowly from my armchair, my posture straight, my eyes firm, meeting her gaze directly. You ruined your own lives. Your choices, your entitlement, your blatant disregard for my feelings and my property, led to this. I am simply allowing the consequences of your actions to finally manifest. I am no longer enabling your destructive behavior. I walked towards the door, opening it wide, a gesture of dismissal, of finality. This conversation is over. You will no longer receive any financial support from me. From now on, you will stand on your own 2 feet. Just as I learned to do when your father passed away and I was left to navigate a world I barely knew, and just as every independent adult must do. I suggest you begin making arrangements for your new reality. Corbin, stunned, tried one last desperate plea, his voice cracking. Ilara, please. We'll do anything. We'll pay you back. We'll apologize. Just don't do this. Please. It's too late for apologies, Corbin, I said, my voice cold yet tinged with a deep, weary sadness. The time for that was when I confronted Kaylin about the theft, when I gave her a chance to explain, to apologize, to show even a flicker of remorse. The time for that was before the laughter. You had your chance. Many chances, over many years. Now, you have your consequences. I looked at my grandchildren, their faces pale and confused, still standing by the door, their young minds struggling to comprehend the seismic shift occurring around them. Madison, Liam, I said, my voice softening slightly, a pang of genuine heartache for them, I love you both very much. And I truly hope you will grow up to be different people than your parents. But your parents have made choices that have led to this. I hope you will understand, one day, the importance of integrity, hard work, and true respect. And I hope you learn from their mistakes, rather than repeating them. And with that, I stepped back and closed the door firmly, a quiet click that resonated like a thunderclap, leaving them standing on my porch, their shocked, desperate faces a mirror of their unraveling world. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was a silence of peace, of liberation, of a burden finally lifted from my weary shoulders. So, what happened next? Well, the immediate aftermath was precisely as dramatic and chaotic as you might imagine for Kaylin and Corbin. For them, it was a terrifying freefall into a reality they had never conceived possible. Within weeks, the bank initiated serious foreclosure proceedings on their sprawling house. They had no savings, no assets, nothing to fall back on because they had always relied on me, had never bothered to build their own financial safety net. They tried desperately to find a buyer quickly, scrambling to avoid total financial ruin and a permanent black mark on their credit. In their desperation, they ended up selling it for far less than it was worth, a fraction of its market value, just to escape the mounting debt. They had to move into a much smaller, rented house, in a neighborhood they considered beneath them, a far cry from their exclusive enclave. They called me, begging, pleading, accusing. Their messages veered from tearful pleas to vitriolic insults. I ignored every call. Every text. My lawyers handled all communication, a firm, impenetrable barrier between us. The luxury cars were repossessed swiftly, one after another, as the leasing and financing companies recognized the absence of payments. Corbin's prized sports car, Kaylin's fancy SUV, even their minivan, gone. They had to buy cheap, used vehicles, something they hadn't driven in decades, a visible symbol of their fallen status. The humiliation, I'm sure, was immense, but it was a humiliation entirely of their own making. As for Madison and Liam, the children were indeed pulled out of their elite private school midway through the semester. Kaylin and Corbin had no choice but to enroll them in the local public school, which, while perfectly adequate and well-regarded, was a huge blow to their status-obsessed parents. I heard through the grapevine, a kind neighbor who still occasionally spoke to Kaylin, though less and less frequently, that Madison was devastated about leaving her equestrian club, her beloved horse, and her friends, and Liam was struggling to adjust to a new environment without his familiar friends, his private tutors, and the intellectual stimulation he was used to. My heart ached for them, truly, for the innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire of their parents' greed. But I reminded myself that children are resilient, and perhaps, this forced humility, this exposure to a different reality, might actually be good for them in the long run. Perhaps it would teach them the value of hard work and self-reliance that their parents had never learned. As for their college endowments, they were indeed withdrawn. I redirected them, quietly, anonymously, to a small, deserving scholarship fund at a local community college, specifically for students from disadvantaged backgrounds who demonstrated genuine academic promise. I felt it was a more fitting legacy, a truer act of charity. Their lives, Kaylin and Corbin's, were utterly transformed. Corbin had to take on extra shifts at work harder than he ever had in his life, and take on less glamorous clients, just to keep them afloat. Kaylin, who had never worked a day in her adult life, having always been supported by me and then Corbin, tried to find part-time employment, but her skills were limited, and her inherent entitlement, I'm sure, shone through in every interview, making her undesirable to potential employers. They were forced to budget, to cut back on every luxury, to learn, for the first time, what it meant to live within their means, to prioritize needs over wants. Their social circle, largely built on their ostentatious lifestyle and their perceived wealth, dwindled rapidly. They became, by all accounts, isolated and deeply resentful, living a life they considered far beneath them. And me? What happened to my life, you ask? A profound, astonishing peace settled over me, a tranquility I hadn't realized was missing until it filled me. It was like shedding a heavy, suffocating cloak I hadn't even realized I was wearing for decades. The constant anxiety, the low hum of worry about their next demand, the subtle sting of their disrespect, the nagging feeling that I was never enough, it all just vanished. It was replaced by a lightness of being, a quiet joy. My home, once a silent monument to my lonely generosity, became my sanctuary again, filled with sunlight and the quiet sounds of my own choosing. I finally completed my rose garden project, pouring my time and attention into it with renewed passion, watching the buds unfurl, vibrant and full of promise, a true testament to resilience and renewal. It was beautiful, truly, exactly as I had envisioned. I redirected the funds I had originally intended for its endowment to a local charity that supports community gardens and food banks, knowing the money would be put to good, honest use, helping those who truly needed it. I started doing things I had put off for years, things Thomas and I had always talked about but never quite got around to. I joined a book club at the local library, something I'd always wanted to do but never felt I had the time for, or perhaps, the mental space. I took up painting again, a hobby I had dabbled in as a young woman, before life's demands and my family's needs took precedence. My canvases now are filled with vibrant landscapes, bold brushstrokes, and bright, hopeful colors, not the muted, hesitant hues of my past. I started traveling, small, quiet trips at first, to places I'd always dreamed of seeing. A quaint bed and breakfast in Vermont for the fall foliage, watching the leaves turn a riot of color, a week exploring the charming coastal towns of Maine, savoring fresh seafood and salty air. I met wonderful people, genuine people, who valued conversation and shared experiences, not status or wealth. My relationships, too, shifted dramatically. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected, too consumed by my family's demands and the constant cycle of giving. We resumed our weekly bridge games, our occasional lunches, our heartfelt conversations. I made new ones through my book club and painting classes, finding joy in simple companionship, shared laughter, and mutual respect. I learned that true connection isn't bought, it's earned through empathy, understanding, and shared humanity. The greatest gift I gave myself wasn't just financial independence, but emotional freedom. I was no longer defined by my role as their benefactor, their ATM. I was Alara again, whole and complete, standing on my own 2 feet, stronger and wiser than I had ever been. I learned that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone, even your own child, is to let them fall. To let them experience the consequences of their actions, to let them hit rock bottom, so they can finally, truly, learn to stand on their own 2 feet, to discover their own strength, their own resilience. Because the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money, but the opportunity to discover their own strength, their own resilience, and their own path in life. And in doing so, I found my own. That was my story. It was painful, yes, more painful than I ever thought possible, but it taught me so much. Our channel is full of life lessons like this one, stories of struggle and triumph, of heartbreak and healing, of finding unexpected strength in the face of adversity. If you found my story resonant, if it touched you in any way, Please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. What do you think? Did I do the right thing? Was I too harsh, or was it the only way? Share your thoughts with me in the comments below. I'll be reading all of them. Thank you for listening.